Hi, this is Rob. Today I'm going to do a spark plug change on my 2010 Prius. Let me give you some background on why I'm changing the plugs. I've had this car a couple of years now. It's a 2010. I bought it from a guy and the car was in really great shape. This is the first engine work other than oil filters and oil changes that I've had to do on this car, and I drive 100 miles a day, 5 days a week to and from work. So when I first got the car, I first noticed one morning, starting the engine, backing up out of my driveway, the engine started running really rough. And it ran rough for about maybe like 5 or 10 seconds, then it cleared up. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. Never had that happen before. So let it go, and maybe a month, 2 months later, it did it again. So I started noticing over the last couple years is that maybe once a month, maybe once every other month, usually on a Monday morning after the car had been sitting over the weekend and I haven't driven it, I'd start the car up and it would run rough. And this might happen once a month. And it would only run rough for about 5-10 seconds at the most, and it would clear up. Well, a couple weeks ago, I got in my car after it sat all weekend on a Monday morning going to work. It's starting to get cooler here. It's, late September, early October. I started the car, put it in reverse, and the engine started running rough. And I thought, well, that's that. What's new? I started going down my driveway, and my driveway was 600 feet long. I got to the end of my driveway, it was still running rough. I made a right-hand turn onto the road, and it was still running rough. I passed 2 neighbors' houses, and I live in the countryside, and it was still running rough. And I'm thinking, oh, crap, I'm not going to make it to work. I got to turn around. I got to go back to the house. Then it threw a check engine light. And right after that, the engine started running smooth. So I went to work, and at work later on that day, I pulled out the fault codes, and the fault codes indicated that it was a misfire on the number 1, number 2 cylinders. I can't remember exactly. I looked at the code, I cleared it, and thought, well, let me see if it comes back again. Up to this point, the engine would only run rough when I started it first thing in the morning, maybe like on a Monday. So shortly after that, within like 3 or 4 days, I was out driving the car after it was already warm. Stopped somewhere, got in the car, started it, and it ran rough. And then it did it again. Just 2 days ago, I took off from work early. My girlfriend and I put the bicycles on the back of the car. We drove about 100 miles from here, parked the car, rode the bicycles for about 2 hours, put the bicycles back on the car, drove the car from the parking lot to a supermarket. Everything's warmed up at this point. Started the engine, went to leave the supermarket parking lot, and this thing ran like crap. And all I'm thinking of is, oh, Jesus, I'm going to get stuck out here. I'm 100 miles from home, The car's going to crap. It maybe ran lousy for about a quarter mile, then it cleared up. So at that point, I decided I'll look some stuff up on the internet. And one of the things that it could be caused by was spark plugs, ignition coil, EGR valve, that sort of thing. Well, I've never changed the spark plugs on this car, so I figured, well, that's probably a good place to start. I'll change the spark plugs. So in the video that I've attached following this intro, I've already got access to the spark plugs. Some of the things I found online was people saying, I'm having a hard time getting a socket that'll fit. I got a socket that'll fit, but now I can't get the plug out of the hole down inside the valve cover. So my little video is going to show you a few things on this, some tricks, tips, that sort of thing. And I put everything back together. At the end, I kind of had to rush because there's a tail end of a hurricane coming through Virginia, and it just started downpouring on me. So have a look at the video. It's got some information for you. So I've got my plastic cover that goes between the bottom of the windshield and the top of the engine. I've got it removed. I've got access to the spark plugs down here inside the valve cover. And these things are recessed. They're like 6 to 8 inches down inside of here. And one of the complaints people have is that they can't find a socket that'll work. What I've got here is I've got an NGK iridium spark plug. The hex on this thing is a metric 14 or 9/16 SAE. And in my socket kit, I've got socket plugs. I've got plug sockets that are like 5/8 or 11/16 and have like a rubber insert that would catch the ceramic portion of the spark plug. So when you get it loose, you can just pop it right up out of the engine block. So one of the issues people complain about is that, well, I can't find a socket deep enough. What I've got here is I've just got a Craftsman 14mm socket, and the plug will fit in. And I'm not sure if the complaint they have is that the top of the plug hits the drive on the ratchet or not, but I have plenty of room in here to put a extension on this and use this Craftsman 14mm socket. Now what's going to happen is if I get this thing loose, this will tend to fall out and remain down inside the recessed area here where the plug goes. So my solution is a piece of 5/16 vinyl tube. And the game plan is to get my socket down in there, loosen up the spark plug, get it unthreaded quite a bit, don't take it out all the way, and then take this piece of vinyl tube and then push the vinyl tube down in on top of the spark plug and use it to unthread the spark plug the rest of the way, and then just fish the spark plug right out of that hole. So I don't know if you can see this or not, but this 14mm spark plug is just the right diameter to slip down in here to grab the plug. And I've already started to take this thing loose, and this thing feels to me like the threads are dry. It hasn't ever been lubed. These are probably the original plugs. That's my guess. The car has like 200,000 miles on it. So once I get it loosened up enough with my ratchet, I'm not going to unthread it completely. I'm going to take the ratchet off. Then I'll take my vinyl tube. I'll fish my vinyl tube down in there, and I'll catch the top of the spark plug and just push the vinyl tube down on top of the spark plug. All right, this is going to take me a little bit, so I'm going to come back after I get the vinyl tube on top of the plug. All right, I've got the 5/16 vinyl tube on top of the spark plug, and now I can just turn it by hand, and when it comes loose, pop it right up out the hole. Here it comes. And there it is. And I just pull the vinyl tube off the spark plug and move on to the next spark plug. So I've got my new plug, and what I've done is I put some anti-seize compound on the threads. When you put the anti-seize on it, keep it off the electrode. That will tend to cause problems for you when you get everything put back together. It probably won't run real smooth. Just slip it back onto the vinyl tube. Take the vinyl tube, drop it down into the hole where the spark plug goes, catch the hole, and start threading. And when you get it started, you should be able to pull the tube back out. Spark plug's in place. Now I can put a ratchet on it and tighten it down. So before I pull the plug coils out of the engine, what I've done is I've come back and I've marked them 1, 2, 3, 4. And the reason I did that is my fault code indicated that I had a problem with possibly the number 1 or number 2 side of the ignition. So when I go to put this back together, I'm going to swap the 1 and 2 with the 3 and 4, and that way if my problem comes back, I'll at least have done something to try to eliminate the coils, or maybe it'll indicate to me that I have a problem with the coil, and I can then move to the next step after. Okay, I've got my 4 plugs changed. I've got the 4 ignition coils back in place on top of the plugs. I've swapped the 1 and 2 with the 3 and the 4 for troubleshooting should the problem come back. I've at least moved the coil from the side that was showing me a problem when I did a scan to the side that didn't have the problem. Now if the problem comes back on the same side, then I know, well, it wasn't the coil. If it moves sides, then it was one of the 2 coils that's causing the problem. That's a matter of doing some more troubleshooting, swapping some more things, and see if I can't eliminate it down to which individual coil is causing an issue. One other thing I want to talk about while I've got this cover off here on top of my engine that's below the window is this little boxed area down here behind the strut on the left side and the right side, which is full of leaves and muck and crap. And before I put all this back together, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my hose. I'm going to hose this area out. In my experience, you get an area that's collecting debris like leaves and it stays wet all the time, it's going to rust. So I'm being proactive here while I've got it apart, and I'll clean all this up and then put the panel back in that goes below my window and just above my engine. So I'm getting ready to put this metal tray back in. This actually goes on top of the engine in this area here. And one of the things I want to show everybody is that there's some plastic barriers that sit vertical when this metal tray is installed. And what you're going to have to do, these things have got like a live plastic hinge on them. And one of the things you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take the clip loose when it's installed. There it is up. Just kind of have to lay it over. You're not going to be able to get this metal tray out unless you lay these plastic things over. There's just a little snap on it, unsnap it, lay it over. Leave them laid over when you put the panel back in, and you shouldn't have much of a problem putting the panel in. I'm getting ready to put the bolts back in that hold this metal tray in place that's just below the windshield. And one of the things I noticed is that it was collecting water, and the hardware on this was starting to rust on me. So before I put everything back together, what I've done is I've taken all the little bolts that hold this panel in, put them in a Ziploc baggie, and I've got a corrosion preventive compound here, and I just kind of spray this down inside the baggie, get everything coated, and then I put the stuff back in. I don't want to put this all back together and then a couple years from now I got to take it apart, and then I've got threads that are rusted and screws that are snapping off on me. So there's a little preventive action taking place. All the bolts are back in the metal tray. And I can come back over here to this little water barrier and catch it, snip it up, snap it up, and the same with the one here at the center. There we go. I'm ready to put the wiper motor mechanism in next, then the plastic cover that goes over everything, and then the wiper blades, and I'm pretty much done. Wiper motor mechanism's back in place. 2 bolts with isolators here. There's a alignment pin that goes straight back into a bracket that's behind where the motor is. 1 more bolt here, and 1 more bolt over here. So I'm done. I got everything back together at this point. One last thing I want to point out when you do this job is before you start, take a picture of your wipers and where your wipers are when they're shut off. I got this back together, and what I had is I had placed my passenger side wiper on a little bit high, and when I got going down the road it just about whacked on the driver's side wiper, and I thought, well, how did I get that so misaligned? So before you start the job and you pull those wiper blades, take a picture and make sure you get them back on. And if you don't take the car for a test drive, at least turn the wipers on and make sure that they're going to stow down in the correct location without hitting anything. And when they come up, they're not going to interfere with each other and get tangled up. So that's my video on changing spark plugs on a 2010 Prius. I'll drive the car, see if my rough running engine comes back, and if it does, hopefully it doesn't. But if it does, hoping that maybe it'll throw a code, and from the code I'll be able to do some more troubleshooting. Normally the rough running engine has not thrown a code. It was only that one morning when it decided to run rough, you know, all the way down to the end of my road, about a mile down from my house, that it threw a code. Thanks for watching. Take care.